Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Mondays Down South. First and foremost, we want to let you guys know Zebo's a little busy with his NBA schedule, so he's not going to be able to join us this week. However, I think we have more than enough of a replacement in Mr. Patrick Bardenett, one of our best friends from high school. We've been buddies for a decade. Me, Ev, and Pat went to Stonebridge High School together. I'm not going to give you all the details about Pat because I want him to introduce himself and give you guys a little bit of information about where he's from, where he went to school, and what his favorite teams are, so we know what his biases are as we conduct this segment. And also, I want to give a shout-out to Patrick because his Yankees just had a huge winner advancing to the ALCS, so that I'm sure he's excited, and it's a good time for him to be talking sports. So, Patty, I bet you go ahead and give people an intro, buddy.
How's it going, everybody? Patrick Bardenett, as the big Kuna said. Big sports guy, big baseball, big basketball, and big college football guy. Went to University of Florida. Go Gators. Not this year, but you know what? It's brick by brick, right? Then we got Yankees, as he alluded to. You know, should be a good series. And lastly, you know, we will be representing the Orlando Magic tonight because you know somebody once told me you can't help who you fall in love with. So
I like that. I like that. Thank you, Patrick. And Patrick kind of teed that up. Ev, I'm going to let you jump in with any comments you have, but Pat kind of teed up our first segment really well, so go ahead, E.
Yeah, I have no comments. Pat, good to have you back. I think we had you on once before, although it was back in kind of the stone age of Mondays Down South, where no one probably was watching, so might as well be brand new, but good to have you again.
You know, back from the dead.
we love it, too, because I think segment-wise, it's been so long I don't recall what we talked about, but I will say it's perfect because he's got his magic jumper going on right there. With that in mind, we're going to do a little NBA season preview. Tonight's opening night. I'm sure by the time you guys hear this pod, it will have been 2 days, so you will have seen most teams have played by then. It's kind of the perfect time to give an idea of what we think of teams this season. Who do we think will be, you know, in the respective conferences, who do we think is going to be successful this season? Who do we think is overrated? Who do we think is underrated? Give a couple sleepers. And then we're going to give you our takes on conference champions, as well as who we think is going to face off in the NBA championship and who's going to win. We'd love to look back at these segments. With that being said, I think we can start. I'm trying to think. Do you guys have a preference? Patty, you're the guest. You let me know which side of the league you want to start on, and we can start on your Magic side, whatever you want to talk about, buddy. Go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, I think you got to start on the East, right? You know, you can leave the best for last when it comes to the defending champs, but the reality is there's a lot of talent all over the league, and we're seeing more parity. For really, you know, the last few years have been significantly more competitive from top to bottom. You're seeing teams like the Grizzlies make large jumps last year. Who's going to be this year's Grizzlies? It's hard to say. I think a lot of people want to see a team, you know, like the Orlando Magic. If Jonathan Isaac can figure out how to stay healthy and stay on the court, he's a big-time impact player. You put some star power around him with Paolo Banchero, who could potentially make a leap. They're a long team. They got a long way to go. They got to figure out how to win games, but there is some raw talent on that team. I also think the Atlanta Hawks, are primed to make a jump. Personally, I don't think they're gonna. I think this is, they have gotten their supporting cast with Murray coming over from the Spurs, who no longer knows how to act right since he's not with Coach Pop. And I don't see this team gelling on paper. I think Murray is a great player who needs the ball in his hands, and so is Trae Young. And when you have two guys like that and only one of them can shoot, I think you're going to run into problems.
I think that's kind of why I like the combo there, because I think I mean, DeJounte, you kind of do want that playmaking ability to keep the ball in his hands, but like Trey, you could easily work off the ball just with his shooting ability. I mean, he can create off the dribble as well. But it's interesting because they are two, more kind of point guard types, but I think it could work. I'm a little more concerned maybe about the bigs. I guess Capella's still there. He's solid, a good rim runner, but like they've been trying to get rid of John Collins forever. I guess they're going to keep riding with him, so they still haven't gotten rid of him. DeAndre Hunter's been kind of a disappointment throughout his career, so is he going to step up? So we'll just have to see what happens with the rest of the team, but I think the backcourt's going to be fine. I think they're going to work all right together.
Capella is the most underrated center in the league. I believe this from a player who doesn't play a sexy game is going to get you your 12 rebounds a game. He's going to play solid defense, and he's going to hit a pick and roll with power every time. And that's all you need. If you surround him with players that are going to put him in positions to succeed, then he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's a fair point. What's funny? I've actually been a big John Collins supporter for years now. I actually think he's a very good player that offensively is one of the better bigs in the league in the sense of like skills and talent. The only thing with him being, I just don't think Atlanta's the right fit for him. So I hope that he does get traded and gets an opportunity to play for a team where he can showcase that talent a little bit more, because I think he can be a contributor to a title competitor. I like what you said about the Magic. I do think that they have a lot of potential down the road. I think ideally for them, they probably want to get into one more lottery if they can to kind of secure that one extra player, and maybe eventually you can get a star to come down to Orlando again and play with those young core. Before we jump into other young teams, I think a perfect thing to talk about is we're talking about the East anyway. Tonight we got the Celtics and the 76ers kicking off the season in a big Eastern Conference matchup. I want to get y'all's thoughts on what you think of the Celtics this season. Obviously, with all the E-Man news that's broken, curious to see what you guys think of how that's going to affect the chemistry and the potential of the Celtics. And also, I want to get your perspective on what you think of this matchup. Like, which one of these two teams do you like for tonight, and just long term, like, which one of these two teams do you like more in the East? I think that's a good starting tipping off point for the season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think this is a great game to start us off tonight. I think you're looking at the second and the third seed in the East. I think the Bucks are going to be a very easy one if they play the way they need to and stay healthy, which they somehow find a way to do even when they're not healthy. But I look at the Celtics. They're long. They got some really solid experience in the postseason that they didn't have before that. How's that going to translate into 82 games? I think it turns into a 2 or a 3 seed. They were on the verge of trading one of their superstars last year, and all of a sudden got it together, figured out how to be a cohesive unit, and the rest spoke for themselves, right? They were favored at one point in the NBA Finals, incorrectly, but that's neither here nor there. I look at the Sixers and Harden taking a team-friendly contract. That's a big move. Is it going to pay off? There's only one way to find out. I think they still need to find a way to move the ball without him on the floor. And that's where Tyrese Maxey is going to have to continue to make that jump. He was terrific for him last year. He has an incredible amount of athleticism. If he can continue to not only create his own shot, but make other people better around him, then they're going to be scary.
I like that. Ev, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, with regards to Boston, I think my only concern with them is obviously how the new coach works his way in. I mean, Udoka, was terrific once he kind of got acclimated to the team, and they got acclimated with him in the second half last year. So we'll see if that has an impact. I'm not sold on the Brogdon addition making a huge difference, but I mean, I think they have enough there from last year that they'll be, one of the top 4 seeds for sure. And I love Philly this year. I thought last year when they got Harden that him and Embiid are, arguably one of the most perfect star pairings in the NBA if it works well. Harden, when he's happy and he's somewhere he wants to be, is always the question. And it seems like he's happy in Philly, so he's not going to shut it down, gain 20 pounds and whatnot. So, I love Maxey. Obviously he is a key player. And Tobias Harris, if Tobias Harris kind of bounces back and has a good year, and, he's not going to live up to his contract because that contract is massive. But, if he can have a good year and be an additional scorer, PJ Tucker was a great signing thanks to Harden taking that pay cut Pat mentioned. So, they got some guys off the bench, so I'm a big Sixers guy this year.
So I think in the scheme of things, it would not surprise me if the Sixers, I'm not saying they're going to, but it would not surprise me if they finish as a higher seed than the Celtics, mainly because I'm not a big believer in droughts after conference championships or going to the championship, but I actually just think the Celtics were probably exhausted after, one, the season they had last year, and then two, obviously with a little bit of the maneuvering with the Ime situation, and also with the young guys kind of figuring it out again. That defense is something special, on top of the fact that they figured out a way to score last year. And honestly, I got to call myself out. I think I said this last year when we talked about the finals a little bit. I always said that Tatum and Jaylen Brown, after watching them for 4 or 5 years together with different stars next to them, I always felt like those two would never be able to get to a championship together, much less win one. I know they haven't won one yet, but the season they had last year was by far and away blew me out of the water and completely proved me incorrect, even if they didn't win. And so I'm certainly rooting for them to have success this season. However, I do feel in like a stacked East this year. I don't expect them to repeat as the Eastern Conference champions. And I think that kind of tees up the perfect next point, right? Because you look at the East, and Pat kind of alluded to this earlier. He said we're going to save the best for last, but I actually think we're talking about the best first, because I think the East is the deeper conference this year in the sense of when we talk about them having anywhere from 4 to 5 to maybe 6 teams that could all compete for a championship this year. It's kind of that parity you alluded to, Pat, because normally, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, if you said, let's preview the NBA, it was pretty easy. We would just say it's going to be LeBron on the East versus the Warriors in the West, and that's pretty much, a guaranteed situation every year. Nowadays, it's almost like, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's so difficult to predict with the amount of parity there is. So with that being said, I would say there's 5 or 6 teams. Maybe there's one I'm forgetting, but if we include, let's say, the Bucks, who I think a lot of people are picking as their favorites, including the Brooklyn Nets, obviously with all the offseason drama there is and everything like that, but they're coming back. If you include both the Harden Sixers and you include the Nets who made the finals last year, and you include a couple other underdogs like the Hawks and a couple other teams below that, the Miami Heat, of course, can't forget about them. When you include all those teams, give me your seeding for the top 4. Who do you think I'm not going to say give me all 8, but I want to know who your guys' top 4 is and in what order.
I got you. I think number 1 seed's going to be the Bucks. I think they're too good for too long, and they find ways to win games. Mm-hmm. 2, I will go with. I actually think you're right. I think the Miami Heat probably go to number 2 if they can and kind of replicate some of their success in the past few years. If those undrafted players continue to play at a high level, or if they can find some more magic. You look at what Max Strus did last year, just absolutely incredible out of nowhere, right? Just high-quality, productive minutes on both sides of the ball. 3, I think I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics. I think there's too much talent there for them not to figure it out, and I think it's similar to what they did last year, even when it was coming down to the trade deadline. I think the reality is they have way too much talent, and that's what wins in this league night in and night out. Who's going to win you a ball game? And they have 2 guys that can do that on a consistent basis. And my 4th seed, one team that we haven't talked about yet. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers have a remarkable young core. And if Donovan Mitchell can figure out how to be a little bit more efficient, I love his athleticism. I do love his game. I think that he is finally in a situation where he feels like he can use his athleticism correctly. Utah was consistently in the bottom of fast break points per game for his tenure there, and a lot of that's due to the surrounding pieces they had. You've got a young, fun, running and gunning team with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, a young candidate for potentially most improved because nobody knows what that word means anymore because apparently Jock can win the award. And, I think they're really fun, and they're putting themselves in a prime position to get LeBron back for one more year.
Yeah,
So
I love that you brought up Cleveland. I don't know that Bron's going to come back because I'm pretty sure he just signed a 4-year extension with the Lakers unless he forces a trade. However, as far as Cleveland specifically goes, Mobley, Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen, and Donovan Mitchell. Are you kidding me? And I'm still leaving some guys out. That is maybe my favorite young youth squad I've ever seen. I think Jarrett Allen is, maybe the sleeper on that team because he was one of those guys that got traded in that James Harden package. And I always loved Jarrett Allen on the Nets. And I think Jarrett Allen has been nothing but, that perfect rim protector that can put up 15 to 20 if you need it on any given night, get you 10 rebounds. I love Jarrett Allen. And then Mobley, we're talking about a guy that I legitimately believe in a situation where big men maybe don't get as much love as they used to. I'm talking about a guy that's got like future MVP potential. That's how good his ceiling is, because he's just such an all-around player and he's got that potential. So I'm really glad you brought the Cavaliers up just to talk about him. Do I believe they're going to jump up into the top 4 in the East this year in that loaded East? I personally do not. However, I'm glad you gave him a shout-out because I think they're definitely worth talking about. Ev, I'm going to kick it over to you. Give your thoughts about the Cavs or talk about your top 4 as well.
No, I love the Cavs. Completely echo what you guys are thinking. I think it'll take them a little bit to gel, specifically with Mitchell, like you mentioned, being a pretty ball-dominant player. But so I'm going to leave him out of my top 4, although I was tempted. But since you put him in there, I'll back off. And agreed, Bucks. I'm going to put Sixers at 2. I'm going to put Boston at 3. And to be a little different here, we'll see if it is different. It's usually size team, but I'm not a Brooklyn Nets fan by any means, but it's hard for me to envision a team if KD does stay around and they don't end up trading him anyway, that him and Kyrie can't find their way to the top 4. I'm not even going to factor in Ben Simmons and the fact that they wanted to fire Nash for Ime Udoka, so that's why the Celtics didn't fire him outright. But I think they can find a way into the top 4.
I love you brought them up because they were definitely going to make my top 4. However, number 1 for me will be the Milwaukee Bucks. I think they're just a model of consistency over the last 4 or 5 years. I think they're the easy pick to win the most games in the East just because their stars tend to play pretty much every game. You rarely ever see Giannis or any of these guys sitting. I think that really determines your standings, right? It determines how much you leave your guys on the floor. Actually, number 2 for me, but this is with full bias, I picked the Nets because I actually believe this season, I hope I don't bite these words, but I actually believe this season we'll see KD and Kyrie, fingers crossed for good health, but I believe in the sense of wanting to play. I think there's going to be the most motivated KD and Kyrie you've seen in years, and I believe they'll actually play. I'm not saying every single game, but I think they'll play 70% of the season or more, which should be more than enough for them to become or win enough games to be a 2 seed. My 3 seed is going to be Boston because I just think, again, what they did in the second half last year, all the way until the finals, losing to the Warriors, obviously they didn't win the championship, but I would argue they were the best team in the NBA in the second half last year. They just seemed unstoppable for a stretch there just because they're so well-rounded. And they've only added. They haven't lost, which is pretty impressive. So I expect them to continue to win a lot of games and finish as 3. And 4 for me is going to be Heat. So I think the Heat, just with, again, model of consistency, and they're like play rough and tough. Like they're an old-school basketball team, and that's the kind of team you don't see a lot of like lag from because they're just going to beat you up and hold you to 100 points and then score a few more than you, and that's kind of their methodology. So that's the kind of team that translates to wins. What I do find interesting, if I remember correctly, did we all leave Philly out of our top 4? Eb, did you include Philly? Did you had it too? Okay, that's an interesting one. So this is kind of perfect because I am curious to see what our conference champion or what our conference matchup we think is going to be. Like, who do you guys think is going to face off in the East then for the conference championship? Because this is what we have a parity between the 3 of us, so this should be interesting.
That's the perfect word for it, Cy. Parity. I was thinking about it after you guys said your picks, and it's just unbelievable. Like you talked about, there's 5 to 6 teams where if you told me they were going to be a top 2 or a 3 seed, I'd say, yeah, that's possible. And we haven't seen that in a long time, and it's good to see, and hopefully will lead to some consistent followings for all these teams and a little bit more market share. But I think for the conference finals, I still think I have to go with the Bucks. If we're assuming everybody can stay healthy, I just don't see somebody figuring out how to stop Giannis. I don't think there is a formula, and he's one of those few players that you can only hope to contain him. If he gets a full head of steam, if you can get him out on the break, if you can get him to the free throw line, which he's vastly improved upon, then he's going to make a difference, and it's going to be hard for anybody to match that efficiency.
So you think it's the Bucks? Who you got him beating?
Bucks. I think it's Bucks taking off the Celtics. I think the Celtics, I think they get close. I think they're going to have some internal issues that are going to prove to be too much.
I'm riding with the Sixers here. I got Sixers over Bucks. I think the Bucks here, but I'm believing in this the new and improved Rockets basically that they've built here.
There's some truth to that. Look at PJ Tucker. Look at Shake Milton. I mean, I like these pieces, right?
Daniel House, former Rocket, but he's trash. But
All right, we're reaching there, right? But also, how much production are you going to get out of a 37-year-old PJ Tucker, right? What do you need from him? His legs are shot. Do not let him stand more than 15 feet from the bucket, but he will anyway. It's just, am I going to trust PJ Tucker to get a stop on Jason Tatum for 40 minutes a game? And the answer to me is no.
I love it. My personal take on this is, it's funny because I feel like this is like, this should be an Embiid first team, and obviously Harden is going to be the point guard of that team, and I love that. If he can get out of his own way, which I think he did a great job of on the Nets, I don't think he gets enough credit for how much he assimilated that point guard role and was willing to let the other guys be the scorers and just be one of the best playmakers in the NBA. I believed he was a legitimate MVP candidate even when he wasn't dropping 40 points because he was so efficient. Here's my thing, though. My ideal matchup, the matchup I would love to see, is Brooklyn versus Philly, just because of the amount of crazy storylines that you'd see between the whole Harden and Nets drama, between the whole Simmons and Embiid and the whole Simmons and just Sixers drama in general. I feel like that'd be hilarious. However, I personally am not as big on the Sixers as Evan is. Now, I want to give a shout-out to our boy Kevin Smickey, who's been a regular for us for years. I think he's breeding a little and whispering a little nonsense into Evan's ear, getting him a little excited about the Sixers this year. So I got to give a shout-out to Smickey. I can't wait to hear a little bit more from him. And I know Ev's got his insider scouts. I'll let Ev respond to that real quick.
He actually hasn't said a word to me about buzzing up the Sixers, man. I like the team. I like the team. Now, Philly's different story, man. That kid's having a heck of a night, man. Opening night with the Sixers and the Phillies are playing right now. What a wild night for Philly sports fans. But
big night, no doubt.
I'm with that. I actually think, for me, the matchup, at least the matchup I want to see, the matchup I want to see is, like I alluded to, the Nets over the Sixers. It's so hard not to pick the Bucks in your conference championship because Giannis is just that special, and you got Chris Middleton coming back this year, which was I think just losing Chris Middleton last year, I think a lot of people slept on how important that was. I think that Celtics series could have been a whole lot different if Middleton was there, and we could have seen the Bucks repeating as champions. So it's hard to pick against them. With that being said, though, I'm going to go Brooklyn facing off against Boston, right? I think that's kind of, for me, that dream matchup of last year, Brooklyn with all the nonsense that was happening with them not being able to, players on the floor, the drama with Kyrie, the drama with Harden, everything like that. This offseason with KD requesting the trade, all that going on. Ben Simmons getting traded for, never playing a game. I mean, you could write a novel about the Brooklyn Nets last season, and then them going into the playoffs and being an 8th seed and getting swept by the getting swept by the Celtics, which they just flat out were embarrassed by. However, this season, that team, whether people want to believe it or not because of all the off-court drama and stuff, I believe is a completely different roster. One, in terms of mentality, and two, in terms of actual players that are going to be on the floor. I think you're going to hear it from me here first, and obviously I have a lot of bias specifically with this. But I think you could potentially see both Kyrie and KD top 5 in the MVP conversation this year, because I just think, like, regular season-wise, that's how motivated they're going to be, in the sense of just trying to prove the haters wrong because of how much obvious and sometimes deservedly crap they got over the last couple of years, especially Kyrie, just from everything I'm seeing. I know he's a kind of a loose cannon in the sense of whether he's going to be on the floor or not, but just I think his mentality and just his talent. I mean, I think people forget this dude's averaged 28 and 6 his entire time in Brooklyn. I mean, he's been the dude literally sat out for half a season last year, came back, and within the first 2 weeks had games where he dropped 60, 50, and 40 in the first 2 weeks. It looks like this guy just wakes up and is ready to roll, right? But the thing I want to focus on is Ben Simmons. I think Ben Simmons, after the last couple of seasons, everybody's like, oh, Ben Simmons, he's a choker, he can't make his free throws, he doesn't have the mentality, he makes excuses, so on and so forth. I know it's just the preseason, I know it's just the offseason, but are we forgetting that Ben Simmons was first team all defensive NBA for 2 years in a row? His first several seasons in the NBA, he was an all-star. And we're talking about one of the greatest passers that we've seen since LeBron James, with Kyrie Irving and KD playing next to him, not to mention a litany of shooters and Joe Harris coming off the bench. You got Seth Curry in that lineup. You got Patty Mills. That team is built to win a championship, not to mention Nick Claxton, who balled out last year. And then they added Royce O'Neal, who's a great defensive stopper and was literally the perfect piece for that team. When I put that all together, I legitimately believe that assuming you get a fully ready Kyrie and KD, that team, they're winning the conference for me. And you guys knew I was going on Netsfield today, and I had to go on it because I just think because of all the drama, they're getting slept on, and I love it because this is going to be a big bet for me. I'm about to put money down on my Nets for the season.
The biggest what-if team in the history of sports. We'll see if they can deliver this year.
Indeed.
Absolutely. You got your 3-time Rookie of the Year, Ben Simmons. How are they going to handle adversity? How are they, that's the key. Is how are they going to handle adversity? So far, they have folded time and time again. What makes you think this season's any different? I think that's what I struggle with. And I think that's where you're going to see the make or break. You know, this team limped its way into the playoffs and got their ass kicked by a very good Boston team. What can they bring this year that they didn't have last year by the time they got to the playoffs? I understand Kyrie wasn't playing a ton for some personal reasons, but at the end of the day, I don't see it.
Y'all know me. I could talk about the Nets all day, but I do think we got to give the West a little bit of love. We probably won't focus as much time on them just because I know the East, with our respective picks, probably took up a lot of our what we wanted to talk about. But with the West, obviously, you have your defending Golden State Warriors. You got the LeBron James Lakers, who didn't even make the playoffs last year, and Mr. Russell Westbrook, who doesn't even want to be in his team's huddle right now. Which is comical. All those videos have me just laughing so hard. He literally will like blatantly look at his huddle and not walk in.
He doesn't give a shit.
And the funniest part is he goes and defends it by saying, I was talking to the coaches. You guys clearly weren't paying attention in the videos. It's like, dude, everyone can see you clearly weren't. Anyway, moving on. You got the Nuggets with Jokic, who is an all-world talent at center, who I don't think gets enough love. You got the Clippers getting Kawhi back. I mean, the list goes on. I even love a team like where Anthony Edwards and company just added Anthony Edwards and Cat just added Rudy Gobert to create a pretty fun with D'Angelo Russell. That's a fun four right there to kind of build your roster around. So when you consider all that, when you consider the Jazz trading with Donovan Mitchell and company, what do you guys see in the West? I won't spend too long on specific teams, but I do want to hear what your top four are and who you guys think are making the conference finals. And you're welcome to put in some sleepers in there.
Oh, well, we're breezing through it. Hold on, if we're already on top four, I got to think. Yeah, I'm not including the Lakers.
No.
Can we talk the Lakers for a second, though? It's so obvious how the best way to run this team is, and I know Darvin, whatever his name is, Ham, mentioned that they might play Westbrook off the bench. But, like, that is so clearly, I think, the best way to run this team. Because Russ is best when he's surrounded by guys that no one's heard of. And he, like, kind of runs the show to an extent, but he's still facilitating, you know. And obviously, I don't think that's ultimately going to result in success. But it's like, that's the best way to do it. You keep him out of AD and LeBron's way. I really think that's the best way to run this team. I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think they make it there. Jamal Murray coming back too. Denver is going to be a really solid team. Gobert and Cat. I mean, obviously it's two fantastic players, but like I really do not see that one gelling particularly well. Although I still think they're going to be a great team. I love Anthony Edwards. Clippers. I'm here for the John Wall resurgence as well. Kawhi's back. Paul George. John Wall, great story. Love the guy. Almost took his own life. Glad he's feeling better and he got himself in a good situation. Golden State's obviously going to be there. Sorry, I'm just talking here, trying to figure out my top four. But give me Golden State at 1. Oh boy, give me the Clips at 2. Ooh, Memphis and say Minnesota. In
now,
some order.
What's amazing about what you just talked about, you just left out the number one team in the West last year, in the Phoenix Suns.
You're right. I did leave out the Suns.
Yep.
All right. Bump out Minnesota. Bump out Minnesota. I'm just scared of this. Bump up. Yeah. You got to include Phoenix, I think so.
It's funny, guys. It's funny, guys, because we included all those guys, and we haven't even talked about Luka Magic and the Mavs who made it to the conference finals last year. And we haven't talked about the fact that I don't think these guys are going to make a lot of noise. But the Blazers get Damian Lillard back. And we didn't talk about the New Orleans Pelicans with C.J. McCollum, Zion Williamson, and also Brandon Ingram. That pair of three, even Ingram and McCollum together last year made some noise. Imagine adding Zion to that mix if he can stay healthy. The West is like, I feel bad for the team that gets kicked out of the play-in because there's just that many great teams. So this is absurd. Go ahead, Patty.
No, I agree with you completely. I think for my fourth seed, I've got the New Orleans Pelicans. I think Zion is an easy player to play around. I think he's an easy player to build around. They really found something special there with Ingram and McCollum working well together. And if you have somebody who can hustle on the defensive end, that I do believe Zion can do when properly motivated, I really think that they're going to be scary and they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think you're going to see a recession. I don't think we see the Grizzlies perform up to the level that we saw last year. I think they overperformed. I think people will start to figure out how to guard Ja Morant a little bit better. I do think that they have an incredible core around him. I don't think that core is ready to take that next step like they were last year. I think they win about 48 games tops. But I do think that the 3 seed probably goes to I'm going to go with the Suns. I think the Suns are just too good to be ignored, even with all their drama with their ownership swapping over and Ayton not wanting to be there whatsoever. I think winning can change a lot of that, and they're too good to not for at least the beginning of the year. 2, I'm going to go with the Golden State Warriors. I think they are a postseason team. They're built to outplay you over the course of 7 games, and they will rest up their team just enough to get a favorable position. And that leaves your soon-to-be 3-time in a row MVP Jokic to lead the Denver Nuggets to a number 1 seed. I have so much faith in this man. I think he's an absolute monster offensively. Defensively, he's gotten better. He's lost weight and gotten in shape and taken his life and his health and his career very seriously, and you're starting to see that on the court translate to wins. What they did last year was nothing short of incredible without an incredibly efficient Jamal Murray playing the entire year. So I'm very excited to see what they're able to do. Is this the year that Michael Porter Jr. makes the jump and becomes the player that we think he can be? Time will tell, but I really have a lot of faith in this team, and I think they're incredibly well coached as well.
I love it, Pat. I love you going with the Nuggets at 1. I think no matter how great Jokic has been, it still seems like he gets slept on in the grand scheme of things. Back-to-back MVP, one of the few guys to ever do it, and for whatever reason he gets slept on because he's a unique player, a guy playing center that you wouldn't expect a pass-heavy pass, almost a pass-first center. It's kind of incredible. So I love that you picked them. I'm going to go from top to bottom. My number 1 seed is going to be the Suns again. You know what's funny? I know they had an awful series with the Dallas Mavericks to get eliminated last year, but I think people are forgetting just how dominant that team was throughout the regular season last year, as well as the year prior when they made the NBA Finals and lost to Giannis and the Bucks just because nobody could guard Giannis, like you mentioned, Patrick. I think actually that the Chris Paul Suns, Devin Booker, Ayton, all those guys, with the depth that they have, they didn't lose any of their guys, but it seems like because they didn't trade for KD, people are forgetting that this team has been just absolutely the best team in the West in the regular season for the past 2 years, and I believe they're going to hold on to that mantle. Actually, number 2 for me is going to be the LA Clippers, right? I think Kawhi, motivated, healthy, not having played for a year and a half, like he'll actually play more games than we've seen in a while. I feel like Paul George actually stepped up a little bit last year with Kawhi getting hurt. I'm hoping he can shake off that playoff Paul.
Pandemic P, baby.
Pandemic P, exactly. I also think their depth is we don't talk about enough because guys like Reggie Jackson, some of the additional, Marcus Morris, some of the additional defenders they have, that team is from top to bottom is just so loaded, and I believe that's going to translate to a lot of wins, even in games where Kawhi doesn't play. At the 3 seed, I'm going to go with Golden State Warriors, our defending champions. I think there's obviously a lot of drama with the whole Draymond Poole situation, but a full season of Klay, I think Klay gets a little bit healthier this year and a little bit more productive. Obviously, Steph, one of the greatest players of our decade, of our century, and he's gonna ball out like he did last year. I got to give him a lot of credit because for years, have been very critical of his individual accomplishments compared to the stacked team and KD winning championships with him. So him getting his own, I got to give him credit. And then 4 for me, this is the tough one for me, right? Because I don't want to leave the Nuggets out, but I also don't want to leave some of these other teams I like a lot out. So for me, just because of team potential alone, I'm going to go with the Nuggets just because I think they'll win more games than some of the other teams. I might like more to go further in the playoffs. So my 4 seed is going to go ahead and be the Denver Nuggets. So that's my order. I think compared to the East, we had a lot more similarities in our rankings this time around. I believe, Pat, you were missing the Clippers, and I think Ev might have been missing the Suns. I don't know who I was missing from Ev's list, but we seem to have a more similar list. I will kick it back over to Evan. I'm curious to see who your matchup is for the Western Conference Finals this year.
Yeah, I did botch that with the Suns. They're definitely not outside the top 4. So you say parity, I say negligence. But I'm rocking with the Clippers this year as my winner. I'm going to say they beat the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals and match up with the Sixers. But I definitely think the Warriors are going to be there. They're just so stacked. But, to be a little different this year, I think this is the Clippers' time.
I like that. What you got, Pat?
I think you got to go Warriors, and I'm going to go Suns. I think the Suns wind up figuring it out, and I think that they get the rematch, and I think the Warriors beat them again. I think the Warriors take what's theirs, and they're going to head to the finals against the Milwaukee Bucks for the matchup that I've been waiting for a long time.
Okay. All right, I like that. So here's what I got, all right? On one side, I got the LA Clippers facing off. I think Kawhi Leonard, I love Kawhi Leonard. I think he is a champion. And I think people forgot a little bit about Kawhi, and I think he's going to come back this year and remind everyone why he is a top 5 player in the NBA with his two-way talent. I can't wait to see Kawhi play ball again with that Clippers squad. And they're finally going to get over their hurdle without Doc Rivers, and that's going to look really bad on Doc when he doesn't make the finals on the East. Flip side to that is I'm going to have a nice little Staples Center matchup. I can't believe you guys are going to call me out. I'm honestly just calling. I'm asking for it because I'm hoping for it. I want to ride the LeBron train for as long as I can while he's still in the league. And I believe we'll see a completely different version of Anthony Davis. I think we're going to see Anthony Davis from what we saw when they won the finals in the bubble, when he was right next to LeBron as maybe the best player in the league that playoffs. I think we see that version of Anthony Davis. And I believe that even though they won't win enough games to be a top 4 seed, they'll finish somewhere in that 5 to 8 range. And I think all it takes is a bold statement. But I think a run like you saw from them in the bubble with LeBron and AD going off, maybe a little midseason acquisition here or there, that I think could make the difference if, and you guys know my perspective on this, if they can just stop putting up with the Russell Westbrook BS, either leave him on the bench to come in as a second, or honestly just don't play him. I don't care. You don't need Russell. He's basically been a liability. If you need him on the bench to come in and score some points, do that. But if they can get away from the fact that they're paying this guy $60 million and focus on maybe two of the most talented players in the NBA, I legitimately believe the Lakers can go to the finals. And I'm going to pick the Clippers to win and go to the finals. But I'm going to say it's a really close game with a 6 to 7 game series in Staples Center. I think Kawhi gets the best of them just because that team is deeper. I think no matter what Bron and AD do, I think their run ends there. So that's my pick. I'm going to call for that matchup that we've been asking for years now, since Kawhi and LeBron made their decisions or divisions. I was going to say to go to the LA teams.
I respect that. Clippers are deep. I mean, they've got a lot of good players that haven't been good in about 5 years. So we're going to find out what they can do.
I'm excited. With that being said, we got our finals previews here, gentlemen. Ev, I'll let you tee yours up. Pat, you tee yours up, and then I'll jump in, and we'll see what we got. Ev, you got the Sixers versus the Clippers, don't you? Tell me what you got here.
Doc Rivers trying to get his revenge here. There's your storyline. I've got the Sixers winning the NBA Finals this year. I think the process era comes to fruition here in 2023, and they beat the Clippers in 6.
I love it. I think that's a very respectable call. Would love to see Joel Embiid get a ring. I don't think this is his year. I think I've got Warriors versus the Bucks. I think Giannis proves to be too much again because I don't think they have anybody that's going to be able to slow him down. I think Wiggins can do his best, but I think he's just too much for anybody. I got Bucks in 6.
I almost want to. First of all, I like your picks, guys. I almost want to read neg just so I could talk about the LeBron versus the KD and Kyrie matchup because that would just be so incredible. But if I'm sticking to my original pick, I got the Clippers versus Brooklyn, and I legitimately believe that not only are the Nets going to win a championship this year, I think they're going to win in a manner where people are scared of them for years to come because I just believe that level of talent that they have, just especially after what happened last year, has been lost in translation with all the drama. But if we really want to talk about one of the most talented teams, one of the deepest rosters, I'm going with my Nets to win. I'm gonna say it's a 7-game series. I don't think this is gonna be like they're gonna walk in and win in 4, but I just think teams are gonna be held in check with 2 of the most clutch players of all time. And I think Ben Simmons is gonna play like a legitimate all-star this year. So I'm really excited about what the Nets bring to the table this year.
Quick flame of sigh, if I may. So on our last 3 season preview episodes, baseball, NFL, and NBA, you've picked, I guess you didn't pick the Colts to go to the Super Bowl, but you have picked your 3 favorite teams in at least the conference finals at each of those editions. And the Mets didn't even win a playoff game. They won 1 playoff game, just didn't win a playoff series. The Colts look horrendous. We'll see about Brooklyn, but just want to call you out there for a little bit of bias on these season previews.
Listen. I don't dispute the bias. I think the difference is, for the first time in years, the bias for me personally has been at least a little bit warranted. Obviously the jury's out on the Colts, but they're currently a winning team and have some things to figure out. But that season is still young there, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. And also the AFC has 2 teams that are actually definitively good. So I mean, outside of that, who knows? The rest is a crapshoot. So I'm not gonna rule that out just yet. But I didn't pick them in the Super Bowl, so I want to leave that out. That was Zebo.
That was the cool.
The flip side of that is I picked the Mets team this year because obviously there was bias, but it was more of that sleeper pick of like everyone picked the Braves, and ultimately the Braves did take the division. But the Mets won 101 games this year, and I'm not making excuses for the fact that we screwed it up at the end. Obviously, I wish we did better, but it wasn't like throughout the course of the season. I think a lot of people started being like, okay, wait, this team's got some potential to make some noise. So I don't think I was completely crazy because also the Dodgers and the Braves lost in the playoffs this year, right? So I think every team that people picked that went to the World Series from the NL lost. Nobody picked the Phillies versus the Padres in their conference championship. So I think in my defense that one was a little bit like that was a crapshoot.